Hello, Trevor Rauch here. Today I'm going to be doing my presentation on the death penalty. So a quick outline of what this presentation is going to contain. First, we're going to talk about what is the death penalty. Second, we're going to talk about methods of execution. Third, I'm going to show a map of the United States that shows which states currently use the capital punishment versus which states do not. Number 4, we'll talk about famous people, famous last words from inmates on death row. And then finally, number 5, we're going to close out with my personal opinion on the topic. So let's dive right into what is the death penalty. So capital punishment, also known as the death penalty, is defined as a government-sanctioned practice whereby a person is put to death as punishment for a crime they committed. The death penalty is a very controversial topic. It's been a topic that's been debated for years and years, and rightfully so. There's good points made by each side of the argument. So let's move on to the methods of execution. Number 1, lethal injection, and this is the most widely used method of execution for capital punishment today. Any state that is a capital punishment state, 99% of the time, it's going to be lethal injection. And lethal injection is when an inmate is injected with 3 different substances all at one time, but there's 3 different substances inside the liquid that goes into the bloodstream. First, we have sodium thiopental, and this is an anesthetic that puts the inmate to sleep or renders them unconscious. Second, there is pancuronium bromide. This paralyzes the muscle system, and it also slows breathing. And then finally, potassium chloride. That's the actual chemical that stops the heart from beating and renders the inmate dead. Next, we have electrocution. Very common back in the day. The electric chair, obviously a well-known method of execution. The inmate is strapped into a chair, and a metal skull cap electrode is attached to the skull and the forehead, and then along with another electrode, it's attached to the leg of the inmate. The inmate is blindfolded, and a jolt of 500 to 2,000 volts is sent through the inmate's body for a period of about 30 seconds. Once the 30 seconds is up, they'll let the body cool down, check to make sure that the heart is still not beating. If the heart is still beating, they repeat this process until the heart is no longer beating. So obviously not a pleasant way to go out. Next, we have a gas chamber. A gas chamber, typically an inmate strapped to a chair inside of an airtight small room, and everybody else leaves the room. The doctors, prison guards, the warden, they all leave the room. And on the warden's signal, crystals of sodium cyanide cause a chain reaction, which releases hydrogen cyanide gas, which is deadly. When this gas is released, the prisoner is told to take deep breaths to sort of speed up the process. However, a lot of the times prisoners will try to hold their breath. They'll try to prolong the death, and by doing that, it just causes a struggle, causes a painful, agonizing, slow death. Most of the time, the inmate doesn't lose consciousness right away, and then after the death, a fan will suck all the remaining poisonous gas out of the chamber, which allows people with biohazard masks, or gas masks rather, to go in, and they'll spray the body with ammonia to neutralize any of the remaining poisonous gas. Next, we have a firing squad. This method's not nearly as common, but an inmate is typically strapped to a chair that's sitting in front of a wall with sandbags that will absorb the blood. A circular white cloth target is pinned over the inmate's heart, so the shooters know where to aim for to try and, have a quick, painless death. There's 5 shooters that'll stand about 20 feet from the individual. They're armed with rifles, and one of the 5 shooters has blanks, and the other 4 have live ammunition rounds. and it's not known who has what. So the shooters, none of them know for sure if they really did shoot the individual. That's done just for an emotional thing for the shooters, because that way nobody knows who actually killed him. They all shoot on command, and most of the time they hit the target and the person dies instantly. And then finally, for methods of execution, we have hanging. Hanging was the #1 method of execution hundreds of years ago, up until about the mid-1900s. That was the main way to execute people. Inmates' hands and legs are bound together. A black cloth is put over the inmate's head, and the noose is tied around their neck. And then, on command, the trap door below them gives way. The inmate falls, rope snaps, and it's supposed, if everything goes correctly, the inmate's weight should cause about an instantaneous dislocation of the neck, which is supposed to kill the individual instantaneously. However, a lot of the times that doesn't necessarily happen, because that's a hard weight. It's a hard equation to calculate, to have an exact knowing of how long the rope needs to be, how sturdy the rope is. So a lot of the times you'll get somebody that dangles for a few minutes and dies from suffocation, from lack of air, which that's not a good way to go out. And then here we have the map of capital punishment states. This is current. This is just up to date. The green states are states that do have capital punishment, and there's 28 states that currently have the death penalty in place. The blue ones, which includes Michigan, are states that do not have the death penalty. And actually, in 2019, New Mexico abolished the death penalty, and just in 2020, Colorado abolished the death penalty. So this is where we're sitting at, nationwide right now, as far as which states use the death penalty. And now we'll talk about some famous people, some famous last words. I got three main people on this list. First, John Wayne Gacy. He was a convicted serial rapist and killer. He was the clown killer. He was convicted of the murder and rape of 33 men. I know a few of them were younger boys. He was executed by the use of lethal injection on May 10th, 1994. When he was asked if he had any final words, Mr. Gacy said, "Kiss my ass." Timothy McVeigh. Timothy McVeigh, very well known. He's the Oklahoma City bomber. Timothy was an alt-right, anti-government individual, and he made a fertilizer bomb and rented a Ryder rental truck. And he filled the truck with bombs and explosives, parked it he parked it in the parking garage of the Oklahoma City Federal Building, and he detonated the explosive, which absolutely demolished about a third of the entire building, and the building was huge. He killed 149, I believe, 149 adults and 19 children at the Federal Building. He was executed by lethal injection on June 11th, 2001, which means he missed seeing 9/11 by about 2-3 months. And when he died, I believe that he was responsible for the biggest quote-unquote act of terrorism in the United States prior to 9/11. So he never got to see 9/11. But McVeigh, he had no last words. However, he did leave a written note, and on that note, it was a British poem, actually. And at the end of the poem, it said, "I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul." Finally, probably the most famous person on this list, Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy was a serial killer that was convicted of killing 30-plus women from 1974 to 1975, or 1979, sorry. However, the exact number of murders is unknown to this day. It's estimated upwards of 100 young females he murdered. But he was executed by the electric chair, actually, on January 24th, 1989. When he was asked, "Do you have any last words?" he said to Jim and Fred, which that was his lawyers at the time, he said, "Jim and Fred, I'd like you to give my love to my family and friends. And he was executed. And finally, we're going to close out the presentation with my personal opinion on the topic. So this is my personal opinion. Death penalty has really been a controversial topic, and it's been a topic that I've thought about for a while, throughout middle school, throughout high school, throughout college, and my viewpoints changed about it. You know, just getting more knowledge on the topic. It is a very controversial topic, and I don't believe there is necessarily a right or a wrong answer. I think it's totally up to, personal opinion, and that's totally fine. In my personal opinion, I do believe that the death penalty should be allowed. I believe that all 50 states should have the death penalty in place. And my reasoning for that is just, especially over the past few years, with all the mass shootings, all the school shootings, terrible homicides, serial homicides, just all the mass shootings and the craziness that's going on. Me personally, I don't think that it's right that taxpayers have to pay to keep those individuals alive when they have destroyed the lives of hundreds and hundreds of people. For me, it's just, I truly believe that we should not have to pay to keep them alive and breathing when a horrific crime is committed, like a mass shooting or a murder or a school shooting. I do believe, though, that it needs to be reasonable without a doubt, because there are those once in a blue moon mistakes where somebody's wrongfully convicted. Obviously, if somebody shoots up a school, it's going to be known who it is. So as long as it's 100% without a doubt that person committed that terrible act, I think they should be executed within 90 days after they're convicted. Because that's another problem, is that when people are on death row, they can be on death row for years and years and years, and it can take upwards to 30, 40 years before they're even executed after they've been convicted. So that's my opinion on the topic. These are my references right here. Thank you very much for tuning into my PowerPoint. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that it was gave you some knowledge about the death penalty. Everybody stay safe. Have a great rest of the semester, and everybody have a great summer. Thank you very much, guys. Bye.